Good morning, gang. Happy Friday morning. Okay, we all got a little bit of a shock yesterday, didn't we? And it's funny listening to people talk about this, like, oh my God, this is going to be great. Yeah, don't get your hopes up. Yesterday in Nevada, Trump rolled out a new idea that he's got in regards to taxes. Okay, and we've already heard his pledge on no taxes on tips, which is a good thing. No taxes on Social Security, which is a no-brainer to me, okay? I think by the time you've retired, you've paid your dues. But the latest one Trump's talking about now is the possibility of removing the income tax. Sounds great, right? Is it possible? Yeah, but it ain't gonna, trust me, come April, you're paying taxes, okay? No question. Come April 2026, you're paying taxes. 27, you're paying taxes. This could get done, sure, but it's going to take a decade at least to get it under control. And I'm going to give you why, all right? As great as it would be to get rid of income tax, and what Trump wants to do is revert to what we did back in the 19th century, was pay for the federal government based on tariffs, okay? And just so you understand what tariffs are, that's imported goods. The company or the country that is bringing goods to sale in the United States would have to pay a tax on those goods to bring them into the United States. So say Mercedes wants to bring cars into the U.S., they got to pay a tariff. Or French wines, or pick anything, okay? They'd have to pay a tax to sell them in the U.S. Here's the first problem with this. In the United States, in income tax, we collect somewhere around $3 trillion worth of income tax. That's what's paid into the federal coffers every April. Obviously, it comes out of your paycheck, and yet the numbers are all reconciled in April. The deal is we import about $3 trillion worth of goods into the country every year. So in order to offset the income tax revenue, we would have to put 100% tariff onto any goods that are brought into the country. So if you want to buy a Mercedes, I don't know what a Mercedes costs, let's say $100,000. That would mean that it would cost for you to buy that Mercedes $200,000. Because don't think Mercedes is going to go, hey, you know what, it costs us $100,000 to sell the car. We're going to pay $100,000 in tariffs, so we'll sell the car for $100,000. We'll eat the tariffs and we'll make nothing. No, they're just going to pass the cost on to you. So that brings in the second issue, which I'm not going to argue with here. That would reduce the amount of imported goods we get in the United States. And if you start thinking about imported goods, it's not just cars and French wine. I've told you guys the story about avocados forever. As stupid as it is, we grow avocados in California and we export them to Mexico. But then the avocados that are grown in Mexico, we import to the United States. Okay, I want you to remember that. So what that would do is reduce the amount of imports, which means then the tariffs would have to go even higher because, I don't know, if the imports got cut in half, and now all of a sudden we only had $50 million in imports, they'd have to raise the tariffs to 150% and now get $150 million in imports to offset, or tariffs, to offset the taxes. There's a problem, okay? Financially. Now, on the positive side of things, and this is where I agree with this would inevitably bring manufacturing back to the United States. And you know me, I've been an isolationist forever. Screw the rest of the world. You know, you want to do business here, you do it on our terms, that's it. We don't need to do business on yours. And as much as people say, well, we need to export food to China or export coal to China. No, we don't, okay? We don't have to send them anything. And China would be like, well, we're going to put tariffs on American food or American coal. Good, then we're not sending any. How's that for an answer? Again, it gets to the difference of needs and wants, and this is what people need to figure out. This is what government needs to figure out. China needs the food. China needs the coal from the United States. We don't need Mercedes. We don't need French wines. We don't need Mexican avocados. We don't need all the crap that's produced in China. We just want it. You could drink a California wine. You could drive a Chevy. You could buy California avocados. Gee, maybe we could make products, I don't know, your cell phone in the United States instead of China. Okay, we can do all that. I've said this since I was a kid. We are the only self-sufficient country in the world. We do not need anything from anybody else. People say oil. We've got more oil under our feet in this country than anybody else. They talk about Anwar all the time. There's more oil under Alaska than there is in the entire Middle East. Drill, baby, drill. Okay. So that's the first part of how you could possibly get rid of taxes and what the ramifications were. But here's the other issue, and this is one that I hope is implemented very quickly. We need to cut spending, right? And Mrs. P and I joke about this all the time. How is it that Elon Musk came in and bought Twitter, got rid of something like 80 or 90% of the employees, and Twitter never even experienced a hiccup and still works fine? And a lot of people would argue it works better now than it did under Jack Dorsey, right? Why can't we do the same thing with the government? Now, we go back to the late 1800s, and okay, we were a very wealthy country with no income tax. We operated on tariffs. Part of the reason of why is we didn't have a government that spent like crazy. To give you this as a figure, in like 1890, the government what it costs to run the government was about 2% of our GDP. Now, currently, 2024, it is 24% of our GDP. We got a little waste going on in the government. The government should be taking care of the essentials, the federal government. Our defense, yeah, we need to keep the Department of Defense. We need to fix it, yes, but DOD still needs to stick around. I would argue Department of Transportation probably needs to stick around. There's a big difference between what transportation was like in the 1890s and transportation's like in the 2020s, okay? You know, little things like, interstate highways, airports, that's, we have those now. We didn't back then. So yes, DOT needs to stick around. The Secretary of State, State Department, I'd argue that needs to stick around. We still need to have conversations with other countries around the world. We still need to have a international policy. Basically, this is what we're doing, either like it or hit the bricks, okay? There's been many talks of disbanding the Department of Education. That would be a good idea. Let it go back to the states. We can get rid of all that cost. And I mean, I go into this, I'll give you just as an example, and maybe it's still the same, maybe it's not, okay? But after the Army, I did my first couple of years of college at University of North Texas. We've talked about this, Denton. And in order to get my AA, I had to take 2 semesters of federal government and 2 semesters of state government. Okay? Texas state government. Well, when I finished off school up in Indiana, Indiana didn't care that I took Texas state government courses. Indiana didn't require any state government courses. So those now got counted as electives. So the college system already kind of determines by a state level what you need to graduate and what you don't. Why can't we do the same thing for K through 12? Right? And maybe in different parts of the country, there's different things that are taught. You know, I don't know, maybe down south or something, maybe a course in religion is a good thing. In places up north, maybe not so much. Okay? Just saying, let the states determine. We could talk about the Department of Interior. There's another one that could be gutted. Well, we have national parks. We have, Indian reservations. Okay, there's little bits and pieces that you can keep, but most of what's in there is government bloat. Talk about HUD. HUD needs to go. Okay, that's it. And some of you may disagree with me. That's fine. Okay, I'm still a firm believer of, a hand up, not a handout. Department of Homeland Security, adios. That one needs to go immediately, okay? That's just idiotic. The Department of Justice needs to be gutted and get rid of a whole bunch of stuff. You start taking out a lot of these redundant pat on the back, hey, we'll create a job for you type government agencies. And all of a sudden, maybe we get that expense down, not back to 2% of GDP, but hell, if we could get it down to 10% of GDP, that'd be a 150% decrease from where we are now. Be nice, okay? Is it possible that we could get rid of income tax? Maybe, eventually. Do we go to a flat tax? Well, that would work, but there's a problem with a flat tax, okay? And going to both sides of things here. Or a national sales tax, a consumption tax. There's a problem with those, is that they will disproportionately affect the poor and the lower middle class. Because I don't care if you are Elon Musk and the richest man in the world, or you are hanging on by fingernails, hoping to make it till next payday. A loaf of bread costs the same for both of you. So the tax on that loaf of bread would be the same for both of you. And both of you need to eat that loaf of bread. So now the poor would be paying the same taxes as Elon Musk. That's why I don't think a national sales tax works. In regards to a flat tax, less than 50% of the U.S. citizens pay income tax, okay? Most people have a tax liability, or I won't say most, I guess it would be, it's more than 50%, have a tax liability of 0. If we did a flat tax, all of a sudden, let's say it's 10%, all of a sudden 50% of the people in the country who are struggling as is now just got 10% inflation, okay? We need to figure out something different. You hear all the comments of the lithium mines that's going on with like Chimney Rock, and there's all the theories on them trying to do a land grab out in North Carolina to get all the lithium. We heard the big story the other day about the lithium discovery that's centered under Arkansas, but it's a whole lot of southeastern U.S. Okay, how's that going to work? We don't need government owning that land. But if we had something along those lines where the revenue from the lithium, where the revenue from the oil, again, saying Anwar or anywhere else, was paying into the coffers into the U.S., that could solve problems too. Everybody tries to make out the tax situation as there's a simple fix. Somebody can come in here. All we have to do is change one thing. It ain't that easy. It's possible. It takes somebody with grandiose ideas and a whole group of people to put all the puzzle pieces together to figure it out. It's an interesting concept. The one thing it would do is it would boost our economy exponentially. If you start thinking about how much money you actually pay in taxes, go look at your paycheck stub and imagine all those tax dollars back in your pocket each week or each 2 weeks when you get paid, and how you could do better with it than watching the government waste it. We don't need any more bridges to nowhere. We don't need any more, let's give Ukraine hundreds of billions of dollars. We can solve this. It's just going to take an open mind, a lot of effort, and some real crazy things. But the first one is the one that we've all been screaming about that needs to be done. We need to shrink government. Government's the number one employer in the country. And most of the people who have government jobs do absolutely nothing. They do not contribute to the economy at all. But again, when we're spending 24% of our GDP to run the government, that's got to get fixed. Because the people in this country that actually work for a living, create something, create value, okay, I'm not talking necessarily manufacturing, could be a waitress or a dentist. They're not creating anything, but goods and services. Those are the two things that drive the GDP. The government provides neither. The government is just Robin Hood, except they don't steal just from the rich. They steal from everybody and give it to themselves. When we start eliminating them, then we can really start talking about getting rid of taxes and doing something in the way of tax reform. We could very easily, very quickly, all things considered, like I said, take at least a decade, okay, regain our status as the wealthiest country in the world. China's pretty close to taking that away from us. It's just a matter of somebody who wants to end the status quo running the show. Somebody that wants to see the whole country get wealthy, not just a select few. And there's one of the biggest differences of economic policy between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Pinball out.